So in this episode today, what we're going to be focusing on is how to increase your strength for both striking, meaning punching, and also shooting. So now I know all y'all are probably thinking, Chuck, I already know how to increase my punching strength. All I got to do is just hit the bench. And while I don't exactly disagree with you, because of course, if you hit the bench, you're going to get stronger, you're going to add a little bit more muscle mass, so naturally you're going to punch a little bit harder. But the reason I want to show you this technique is because that isn't exactly the most efficient way in order to build strength for punching. And let me tell you why. So when I'm laying down on a bench like this, and then I'm pressing up like so, the only vector that I'm actually facing is gravity, because it's gravity that's providing the resistance for the exercise. Also, if you'll notice that since I'm down like this, my legs aren't actually doing anything because the bench is doing all the stabilization for me. When I throw a punch, I'm standing upright, so not only am I fighting that gravity vector, but I also have to deal with kind of horizontal inertial resistance as well. Beyond that, as I don't have the bench to stabilize my body, that means stabilization has to come from my core and from my legs. So when you look at it that way, punching strength isn't just about your pectoral, it's about activating your entire anterior serape. Now, I live in Tokyo, and most of the time I get around by motorcycle. Actually, it's kind of an old, beat-up 50cc scooter, which is way less cool. Whenever I push it, I'm in a position that's quite similar to punching. I can really feel my core activating. So if you have some kind of a bike or something, then push it and you can see what I mean. You feel it here and you feel it in your legs as well. So if you want to have a much stronger punch, but you don't train the muscles that stabilize your body while you're doing that punch, then it's kind of like putting a really, really big engine in a car without upgrading the wheel and the tire package that transfers that power to the road. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so this is Yutaka. He's going to be helping us out with this exercise. So Yutaka, if you could stand right there. Okay, and then please just cross your arms like that. And then Yutaka is just going to do everything he can to hold a plank as I do this exercise. So from here, I'm going to get into a punching position. Grab here, and then other hand on the hip like this. He just leans forward. And then from here, I just press him out. Lean forward, press out. Lean forward, press out. Lean forward, press out. Okay, thank you. So now this is an exercise that would be great to integrate into your martial arts classes because it's something that you can do in pairs or in partners. So naturally, the great thing about that is that everybody's different sizes within a group of people. So you could have people doing this with people that are much bigger or much, heavier, much smaller, and you can get a whole different range of body types as you're doing this exercise. Okay, one other thing that I want to mention is that as you do it, it's very important to keep stances in mind. Meaning that the way you want to do this, especially if you're training a reverse punch like this or a cross, you want to make sure that you're doing it with your hips completely forward and completely square, just like you would when you're punching. The natural tendency is going to be to kind of plant down and then to have your hips open up this way, but that's just not how you punch. You don't punch like this. You punch with your hips forward like that. So you want to make sure you train that. Also, having your heel off the ground like this, okay? Having your heel off the ground this way makes this pretty much the most functional stance that you've got. So for example, if you imagine pushing a car while it's in neutral or something, right? You don't do it with your feet flat like this as you're pushing. You do it with your hips forward and with your heel off the ground as you drive. So you want to do this exercise the same way, which mechanically is the exact same way that you punch. Now, in the case that you have some kind of hip mobility issues and that position is difficult or painful for you, you can actually do it this way as well, with your heel planted on the ground, just as long as you're making sure that your hips are totally forward. If at all possible, however, this is just a better way to do it because this is just more mechanically sound and more functional. So now, if you don't actually have a partner, but you do have a door, and you happen to have a set of JC bands, you can do the same exercise without a partner. So all you're going to do is you use this little knot to secure in the door like so. And to anchor it, then from here, you just drill the motion like so. Okay? If you need a little bit more resistance, you can step out so that there's a bit more tension in the band. And then as you get stronger, if you still need more resistance from there, you can just go 1, 2, 3. And then you can actually work the exercise using both bands, like that. You can run this exercise contralaterally, like this, for a reverse hand punch. Or from here, unilaterally, for working on your jab strength. So in addition to doing the exercise this way, which is the most functional, or this way, if you have a little bit of hip mobility issue, you can also do it and train the exercise from here. Okay? Doing it from here, you have a lot more strength, and this is especially good for training things where you need to overcome initial inertia. Like again, going back to pushing the car, when you start low and heavy like this, and you push, and then as the car's moving, then you switch to the functional stance. In the case of martial arts, that applies to shooting on people. When you're squared off against somebody who's in a strong and heavy stance, and you need to launch in and shoot. As you're training this, however, you have a lot of power, but the range is also short. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. So again, if you've got your bands like here, you can have that low, squat, heavy stance, and then from here you just press, 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 like so. Now I know you're probably thinking, Chuck, if I do this exercise all the time, which I hope you're gonna, because it's a good exercise, then I'm gonna get a lot stronger, which means I'm gonna outgrow the bands. Point taken. One of the nice things about these bands in particular, you can actually swap out smaller bands for thicker, bigger, or heavier ones. So that as your strength grows, you can get better bands to accommodate the new strength that you have. Personally, I love these things because they're small, they're light. You can ball it up like this, put it in a suitcase, you could travel with it, and all you really need to anchor it is a door, which I'm going to assume that most of you guys have. Okay guys, so that's it for this episode of Martial Strengthening. Please stay tuned as we'll have more episodes on the way. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Yo!